Hey guys, one of the things that I really should have covered a long time ago, and I feel like, I've done you a bit of a disservice by not covering it, which is how we gauge our information um, and do our research online. And I feel like, since we are going into 2024, it's looking like it's going to be a turbulent year, particularly when it comes to misinformation and, living in a post-truth America. Um, this is going to be relevant to wrestling and nutrition and exercise and fitness and all that. I will say that, when you are listening to me specifically, what are my qualifications? Well, I am a personal trainer. I have been certified through WITS, which is World Instructor Training Schools. I've let that one lapse because I don't give a fuck about WITS. It wasn't a very good training program to begin with. But I have been also certified through the National Academy of Sports Medicine, also known as NASM. Different specialties that I've done over the years, NASM is one of the most respected names out there when it comes to fitness. And my sub-qualifications for that is I'm an MMA conditioning specialist. That was the first specialty I got through them. I did the TRX qualification for suspension training, which, if you were around when I did my exercise library and all that, and the fitness program and all that, you saw that we did a lot of suspension work in that. Yeah, and that's because it's part of my specialty. I learned a lot through that program. I am a sports performance specialist. I am a corrective exercise specialist. I'm currently working on my nutrition coach qualification, which is actually kind of like being a personal trainer, but it actually is a separate thing, and you have to get extra CECs from that. And I tend to look at things as unbiased as I possibly can when I'm doing my own research. And we're going to go through kind of how I do that and why I do it that way in this video. So one of the first things that happened, this is one of the first books that I purchased a long time ago when I was brand new to training and read, when it was to go over nutrition. And I know that right now my body is not in the best shape it's ever been in. Part of it is that I've been having the bad knee issue. Part of it is that my eating habits have been shit over the last couple of years because of like really, really bad depression that I've been dealing with, lower activity because of quarantine. A lot of things have added up, and I am the product of my own bad habits. That doesn't mean I don't know what I'm talking about or what I'm supposed to do to fix it. It's just that I really haven't done everything that I could be doing to fix those things. So going back to this book specifically, one of the things about this book is that Nancy Clark's Sports Nutrition, if you go onto Amazon and you read the reviews on this book, one of the things that people complain about a lot in those reviews is that this book, despite being like a whopping, how many is it, 500 pages or so, it doesn't have anything new to say when it comes to nutrition. And here's the thing, is that that's actually a good thing. That's a very good thing, because, and we're going to get into that in just a second, but the problem with the way that we think about, new information, earth-shattering information, is that those are oftentimes things are like a specific study that comes out, or a doctor's opinion when they're trying to sell a book, or something like that, where they want to shake the boat. You cannot sell books that are consistent with the scientific consensus, right? And expect to sell a shit ton of books. It's just not going to happen. You want to say something that is bold and new and exciting, because that's what gets people to buy the books. And so, you're going to be disappointed if you're looking for an answer that is earth-shattering and new. So, for me, I tend to be, pretty when it comes against low carb, the bulking and cutting cycles, intermittent fasting, DHEA as a supplement, and a lot of supplements that are out there. And I think I've talked about a lot of these things over the years here. Excessive protein intake to try to put on more muscle, fat workouts, etc. Because again, these are all things that have come out of, you know, one doctor's research. And I actually had somebody, a friend that I went to college with, who I'm no longer friends with, that, you know, chewed me out because she had found this doctor who had told her to go on to low carb, and he obviously knows more than I do when it comes to choosing a diet. Well, that's partially not true, first of all. Doctors do not have a lot of education unless they've gone out and done extra classes and gone to workshops and gone to other things to get a higher education in nutrition. Nutrition is generally considered outside the scope of practice of most doctors. So, you know, when they recommend a diet, it is to say, okay, you know, they've been told, you know, the DASH diet is going to be good for lowering blood pressure because salt makes you retain more fluid in your bloodstream, so your blood pressure goes up. And I've actually recently seen some video on YouTube that I didn't even bother watching because it's kind of crazy that the people are now arguing that salt doesn't increase your blood pressure. So, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, there might be some data behind that, but it's really, really suspect to me because they're going outside of the scientific consensus, and we will talk about that in just a moment. So again, you know, when you have these outliers that are coming out and saying, you know, you need to follow this diet or you need to train your body this way and so on and so forth, and they are going against the general consensus of the scientific community, oftentimes, again, they're trying to sell you a book, they're trying to get you to sign up for a program, they're trying to get money out of you, and that's the best way to do it, is to say something new and radical and exciting. So, you know, when sometimes the ways that people will do this, and this happened to me when I was over at Fitness Quest here in Auburn, and I gotten fired for speaking out against Stephen Cherninsky, who is a researcher who has developed DHEA supplements, and he's selling them as a potential cure for cancer. That's fucking bullshit. So on and so forth. And, you know, the thing is that his case for DHEA, the first thing that he does when he is speaking about DHEA is he discredits absolutely everybody. And he makes it out to be some kind of conspiracy. And so when we talk about conspiracies, one of the first things that we need to consider is that conspiracy takes a really large amount of cooperation. And one of the most glaring ones that I can point to is the Sandy Hook shooting. When it comes to people saying that the Sandy Hook shooting, they were all crisis actors, that it didn't actually happen, think about how many people were involved in that conspiracy. We are talking the entire U.S. government. We are talking the parents and children, teachers, you know, all these people who are supposedly claiming that this shooting happened and that so many children died. First of all, what is the fucking point of staging a shooting, right? School shootings happen in the U.S. all the time. If you actually look at the statistics, it's almost every single school day out of the year we have a school shooting. It just, you know, it's not until we have those really, really high numbers that we start to see those hitting the news. And if we actually reported on every school shooting every single day, I think that we probably actually would have seen our gun laws change in this country very, very fast. And again, going back to, you know, how unrealistic is it that we got all this cooperation from all these people, these news outlets, from the government to parents to children acting like they just lost their friends and family. children are not usually convincing actors, especially not that many children. You go to an elementary to high school plays, and sometimes you get somebody that's really, really brilliant. But if you look at like the first Harry Potter movie, Daniel Radcliffe was not a great actor in that film. He grew into a great actor. He's a great actor today, but that took a long time. We would be seeing, all these kids move on to Broadway and whatnot and film right now if they were really these brilliant actors. Instead, what we're seeing is them, like David Hogg, running for Congress and stuff like that. So the odds that that conspiracy was true is astronomically impossible, really, when you think about it. So, yes, Sandy Hook totally happened. People died. People are suffering, and we should do something about that. So, not really trying to get on the gun violence soapbox here, but I really want you to stop and think about what it takes to create a conspiracy. So, this goes across the board when we're looking at, Dr. Atkins, who was, the founder of extreme low carb dieting, and now we have keto and all that, and then we have all these different things. Stephen Cherninsky with DHEA, he was shut down by the FTC by making false claims. So there are we have to balance out where we're getting our information. So NASM, in their nutrition course, does lay out the hierarchy of evidence. And so the lowest tier is going to be non-peer-reviewed sources like the news, anecdotes, and tradition. Again, why do we get these, big announcements from the news that science has just suddenly found out that everything that we ever knew was wrong, and this is the truth when it comes to whatever subject you want to place on that. That is a newsworthy headline because it's new and exciting, and it gets viewer engagement. But is it, why don't we ever hear about the highest form of evidence, which is going to be your systemic review and meta-analysis? Well, those things, like, we have changed the way, like, sometimes our macronutrient balance or our caloric intake recommendations might shift a little bit. Like, I'm talking 5%. That might happen when we go through that meta-analysis, but it's unlikely to be that exciting enough to make the news. What makes the news are the new and exciting things. Again, it's the same thing as trying to sell books. So you have peer-reviewed editorials, expert opinions, including your doctor. That's on the second tier when it comes to, what is the quality of information. And again, I'm going to go back to my friend here who said that, this person is a doctor. They know more about nutrition than I do. While they are a doctor, they do know more about the body's systems. That doesn't mean that your doctor isn't biased. That doesn't mean that they aren't trying to sell you on something. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're right. So there are doctors who are board certified doctors. They are licensed professionals who said that COVID was a myth, that we shouldn't be wearing masks, that there were doctors during this time when we had 1 million people in the US die who were COVID deniers. So just because somebody is a doctor doesn't necessarily mean that they are the end-all be-all when it comes to the information that you receive. So, yes, I'm not saying don't trust your doctors, because there are good doctors out there. Most of them are. But there are going to be doctors out there who deny the research that's out there. Going back to the knee issue that I have here, right? I've got a torn meniscus. The orthopedist that I saw was in complete denial that I would develop arthritis if I went for a partial meniscectomy. But the general consensus is moving in that direction. So that back in the day, when you would tear your meniscus, they just remove the whole thing. and then they found out, oh wait, that's a bad thing to do. That is a stupid thing to do, because the meniscus is the padding between your upper leg and your lower leg. It stops you from wearing out your cartilage too fast. And that cartilage wear, that's arthritis building up in there. So, we haven't gotten to the meta-analysis stage when it comes to doing PRP and other treatments when it comes to repairing the meniscus. But there is actually a growing body of evidence that says that doing sutures to the meniscus to repair it, along with doing PRP injections, will actually expedite healing and potentially get healing into the medial zone, the middle zone of the knee, where, and I know when I'm saying medially, it means the outside, towards the midline of your body, but the middle, the more dense side of your meniscus, where my tear actually does go into, PRP might actually be able to get that to heal itself. So yes, we could do the partial meniscectomy, but if we do that along with sutures, along with PRP, we actually might get better result. And the fact that he was denying that body of research was very telling to me. So, but I do understand where he's coming from, because it hasn't quite reached the meta-analysis stage, but it is good enough for the military. So anyways, that was a little bit of a rant. So the thing is that, yes, peer-reviewed editorials means that you are going to have other professionals, maybe they're researchers, maybe they're going to be other doctors, that are going to look at the editorials that's being published in a magazine or a newspaper. And that can be a higher level of evidence, but again, why is it so considered such a low body of evidence? Well, if you were going to, let's say that it was Gary Taubes who had wrote the editorial, and then it was reviewed by Dr. Atkins. Well, those are two fringe people that are agreeing on the same thing. But it's still going against the general consensus that most doctors would recommend. And again, a single doctor can say whatever he wants, and he's going to have his bias working against him on that. So that's, look for the consensus, try to understand the condition or whatever's being told to you, and then approach it with a critical mindset. And we'll get into that a little bit in a bit. So the next thing is observational research, and then you have the randomized controlled trials for level 4 of the hierarchy of evidence. And the thing about randomized controls trials is that we have the observational research, which may be maybe it's going to be a demographic study, maybe it's going to be something, it might be a base study where you don't have the checks and balances. Maybe it's the type of study where you can't get those checks and balances, such as doing a placebo trial for medication, right? So you go into your randomized control trials where now you have maybe a medication, and then you have a placebo, and you give it to two different groups. And the more people that are involved in those studies, the more valid those studies become. And what will happen at that point in time is that you will actually have those trials repeated. And that's a really, really key thing here, is that when we're looking at scientific evidence, if it can be repeated and you get the same results across separate studies, especially studies that might be biased against the original researcher, right? And they do the research exactly the same way that the original researcher did, and they get the same results, well, now you've got some kind of confirmation that says, hey, there's probably something here. So then we go to systemic review and meta-analysis. And the thing about that is that, you might have this study that did things this way and they found this result. And then you have this study that actually did things in a different way, but they drew very similar conclusions. So there might actually be something really, really great there. Oh, look, we found this other study. Boom, and you get this mountain of evidence. And so when we look at RDA recommendations for nutrition specifically, obviously, the way that's done is that they look at thousands of studies and they compile the data between those, and they're like, okay, well, these are outliers. There's not enough evidence here. You've got this body of evidence right here that suggests this. And again, looking at when we talk about how our RDA is formed, they're not just looking at, weight balance or things like that. They're looking at, is this going to lead to a health complication like heart disease? Is it going to lead to cancer? Is it going to lead to diabetes? Is it going to lead to gout? Is it going to, are people going to be low energy or brain fog? Is it going to exacerbate ADHD or, whatever? So those meta-analysis, when they're coming to those conclusions and making your RDAs, it is actually a very large body of evidence that they're looking at, and they're looking at the pros and cons of going too far one way or another when it comes to your macronutrient distribution. So, sorry, my outline's a little bit funky. So, news, a study wide. Okay, we actually talked about this already. Larger reviews are rarely earth-shattering because they are a review of several previous studies, and they're just a lot of times just confirming what we already knew, right? So, a meta-analysis is not particularly exciting. Again, we talked about that. So when you're going and you're doing your own research, you need to be objective and not subjective. And what that means is that when you are looking for an answer, are you applying your bias to it? Subjective is, I think this. Objective means I have observed this, right? So if I said, I don't think that you can punch me unconscious, versus I have observed you punching somebody else and they went unconscious because you punched them. That would be subjective versus objective. You've seen the evidence that somebody punching you in the face is going to knock you out, versus subjective, I don't think that can happen. Right? So we need to be as objective as possible when we're looking for answers. So when you go online and you are looking for answers, what you put in the search bar really, really matters. And I have an example here. Do carbs make you fat versus how are carbs converted to fat, right? And if you're saying looking for do carbs make you fat, well, or how do carbs make you fat, right? You're going to get a lot of results that confirm your bias. Right, because people, when you search for that specifically, are looking for that, or trying to sell you on that idea, versus how are carbs converted to fat. The way that they're converted through fat is through a process called de novo lipogenesis. This is what happens when you intake, roughly, because everybody's body and size and metabolism is going to be a bit different, as well as activity level, as well as when you take in your carbohydrates, right? All these things are factors. But in order for you to store carbohydrate as fat, it has to go through de novo lipogenesis, which takes around 2,000 calories plus to get to that stage if you are being inactive, right? So if you think about how many calories from just pure carbohydrate that takes, and again, it would probably be, I'm eating pure glucose here, or sucralose, or drinking a lot of juice, or drinking a lot of soda. If you are doing those types of behaviors, yes, carbs are going to make you fat. If you are eating brown rice, you're eating a lot of beans, other legumes, whole grain breads, things like that, vegetables. These are all very slow digesting carbohydrates. If you're reserving your white rice for pre-workout as a pre-workout snack, great pre-workout snack, I highly recommend it. Or having some kind of carbohydrate like a juice or soda immediately after your workout, that's going to replenish your glycogen stores. It's not going to get stored as fat. But what can happen, and this is kind of the caveat to that, is that if you are in a high carbohydrate state, so maybe you are eating too much carbs throughout the day, and they are, I classify carbs in kind of 3 tiers. You've got your sugary carbs that are fast metabolizing. This is anytime that you're not pairing your carbohydrates with fiber, fat, or protein. And I know I said fiber, but fiber is, I'm talking insoluble fiber, which will slow the digestion of your simple carbohydrates. You're not pairing those, you're not having them around activity. That's going to be, your your top tier carbohydrate, right? And if you were to have that again post workout, then your body's going to store it as glycogen, and it's perfectly fine. And then you've got your mid level carbohydrates. These are the ones that you want to eat if you are trying to give yourself a carbohydrate boost, but you don't want to be bogged down with too much fiber or other things. This is going to be, again, like white rice. That's going to be maybe not white bread. I think that's a little bit too simple, but mixed grain breads a lot of times will be kind of in that mid-range. So things that aren't going to bog you down and are actually going to give you good energy for your workout, and that would be like a pre-workout snack. And then you've got your, I'm not doing anything, but I need carbohydrate to fuel my brain. And I will mention that one again, because I'm just so anti-keto, is that, the reason why keto was developed was it was to treat epilepsy, and it was to basically reduce activity in the brain by starving the brain of energy. And that would prevent people from having seizures. So, if you want lowered activity in your brain, by all means, go ahead and do that. But there's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't do keto or low carb. So, anyways, off my soapbox once again. When we are looking into doing our internet research, trying to find answers, I would say try to understand the broad concept first. Again, like I said, searching how are carbs converted to fat, when might my body choose to store more fat, what are the key things that makes your body store fat. And you might get some questionable results in there, and so you do have to kind of look at your source. And one of the things that people are like, okay, we can't trust the American government, then don't look at US government sites when you're going online. If you feel that way, look at the Australian government's websites when it comes to your RDAs. You can look at the UK's, you can look at France, you can look at Italy, you can look at pretty much any other country that you want to. And what you're going to probably find is that, at least when I was doing my research, is that most countries are actually in kind of an agreement. So even if they're not doing their own research, or they're not using the same body of research, Australia might be using different studies to come up with their RDAs than the UK is, than the US is, and they're coming up with the same or similar answers, then the results that you're finding are probably pretty trustworthy. There's a Publica research website that publishes studies, scientific studies. That's a pretty decent source to look at. And you can read through the entire study, look at the methods that they used. Do you agree with their methodology? Does the methodology seem biased? Who's funding the study? So again, one of my examples that I go to a lot is, again, Gary Taubes, and the research that he was doing to sell his books, and he wanted to create his own body of research to confirm the messaging that he was trying to sell. So he founded the Nusi Institute. Sorry, I didn't actually add that to my notes. And then he did 4 studies over the course of the existence of that organization, and those studies actually did not find, he was paying them to find confirmation to his bias that would help him sell more books. And they didn't find that. And there was a lot of pressure from him going to the researchers and saying, look, you keep coming up with these results that are confirming, what everybody else is saying about, your macronutrient balance. I want you to find research that confirms what I want it to say. And eventually, after 4 studies that did not confirm what he wanted it to say, he closed down the institute, and he actually ran out of money to do that. And then he went on and published another book saying exactly what he's been saying all along. So, look at who's funding the research, read into it. Again, like I said, Stephen Chernitsky, when he was trying to make his case for DHEA and all that, he had his own research institute that he was running, and it was just a vessel for him to push his own intrinsic bias so that he can sell his supplements to you. So, be very critical about which studies you're actually paying attention to. Sometimes news articles can be beneficial, especially ones that are looking at multiple studies. Read the studies that they cite. There are personal training websites that will have articles on them that will actually have really good research behind them. So try to be very, very critical of your sources. And if you find something that seems like it goes against a general consensus, be very critical of that. Find out, well, why is this going against that? I'm not saying that you're not going to eventually find something that is new and novel, that we're not going to have this massive scientific breakthrough that says the CrossFit way of exercising actually is beneficial, that it's not actually what's causing rhabdomyolysis, right? We might discover that. But where we are right now, we look at that and go, we were seeing the cause and effect, and we believe we know why that cause is happening. But, we could be wrong. And if somebody is truly scientifically minded, if they are truly in it to find truth, then, they are going to be malleable, right? They're going to be open to their bias not being confirmed, right? So, we're going into 2024. We, have seen with our own eyes that there was an insurrection. We have seen, we watched on the news, my husband and I watched as Donald Trump made his speech encouraging his rioters to go to the Capitol. We saw the violence of that day. When the violence was happening, we saw the live stream of that, right? And so I don't think that the news was picking and choosing. We know what the 14th Amendment says, so I don't mean to be political here too much, but looking at what 2024 is going to look like, it's going to be a scary year, because there are a lot of people who buy into that. There are people who are not thinking particularly critically about the information that they're seeing. And so I encourage you to speak to people if you know people who are like that, and just be like, are you looking at the full body of evidence there? How can you look at that and listen to what was being said there and what was being done there, and still drawing those conclusions? And either they'll be open to it or they're not. But I guess that's what I have to say on that. And being a gay man, looking at the future, listening to people like Nikki Haley, and listening to other people who are on those stages, Donald Trump, and where we're going, being somebody who's interracially married, someone who believes in abortion, who has trans family and friends and family members that I support, I am deeply concerned about where we are going as a country, where we might end up landing. So I know that we're all tired, we're fatigued, things have been shit for a long time, we're depressed, and Joe Biden kind of sucks, but at the moment, it could suck a lot worse. And if you are on that side where you're like, well, Joe Biden is supporting the Israel and their genocide of Palestinians, Trump is not going to be any better on that. None of the Republicans are. They are going to support Israel unapologetically in everything. So if that's your hang up on Joe Biden, you need to be a lot more introspective, because there is not a third party candidate that's going to win. And I'm sorry. Again, I am not a fan of Joe Biden. but he's what we have for now. And, you know, if we can, we need to, you know, focus on building a better, stronger Congress with more strong liberal leadership that is going to bring reason to a particularly bad situation here. So I'll get off that soapbox. I'm sorry, I don't really want this too much on my wrestling page, but it is too important not to say something. So thank you guys for watching. Happy New Year. I think I'm going to do 1 or 2 more videos before the end of the year. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. You guys have a lovely day. See you.